Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 16.11, Victory and Defeats, Part 1. We are back.
Hey, sorry, I didn't want to talk about Deltarune again opening the episode, but you mentioned Dark World shortly before we recorded, and I just realized, if you think about it, if you really, really think about it, does Noelle not kind of live in her own Dark World?
Which Noelle?
The hacker girl.
Okay, I thought you meant Noelle from Deltarune.
No, you're Noelle.
Oh yeah, never mind.
Because all her objects talk to her.
Tanner's just with her next time we see her.
Yeah. Yeah, she's struggling all in a world of her own. Does she still have that, by the way? Did that get fixed?
Well, Jesus. Well, it can happen. Still.
Oh, dear. When she's very stressed.
Luckily, she lives a stress-free life. Oh.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Mentally ill, child, terrorist, pick a struggle.
Do you think she could be fixed at any point? Like, could anyone, fix that problem, or is that just baked in there now?
Well, you're not doing well. It can be managed, I would say, at this point.
Managed.
It's
okay.
in there.
Therapy. Alright, shall we begin?
Yeah.
It took more than hands to wield an old demon of the dawn. Once great heroes of Ingansi, their long war against the supremacy had transformed them into degenerate beasts of bloodlust and mayhem, eager to turn their malice against the universe at large. That malice was not an easy thing to resist. Even just touching one of the 5 weapons that housed their consciousnesses, you could feel it. A second heartbeat just beneath your own, seeking to climb your soul and supplant you at the peak. A drumbeat in your bones, a call to endless war. Those who could not control the demon would be controlled by the demon, and those that could not control themselves had no future but puppetry. So it was that only the finest, most disciplined warriors of Ingansi were permitted to even approach an old demon of the dawn. Even fewer were allowed to wield one. It required iron will, it required constant vigilance. It required a heartbeat that drowned out all others. And so, as Jamilu Aguta fought against the first branch of the Tree of Might, the child warlord Xander Rain, he felt no fear at all. Why would he? He faced a far more dangerous opponent every day, all for the sake of repaying his debt to the Oba. This opponent didn't even matter to him. Xander Rain spun his halberd in the air as Jamilu rushed in, and 6 twisting tendrils of air lashed out from around him, each one striking towards Jamilu with strength enough to shatter bones. The attacks were nearly invisible, but Jamilu was ready for them, dropping to the floor and sliding under the table Xander was standing on. From there he stabbed upwards with victory 12 times in an instant, peppering the table with holes and causing it to split into countless pieces. It had been too much to hope that those blind attacks would have hit their mark, though. By the time Jamilu had started stabbing, Xander had already retreated upwards. He floated in the air, robe billowing majestically around him as the currents of wind danced. Jamilu's principality had unlimited access to matters of combat, and so it had access to Xander Rain's observational data as a potential enemy. His Aether ability, instinctive and subconscious, allowed him to control the flow of things. A vague power like that was troublesome, but essentially it allowed him to control the direction and speed of moving objects or forces, at least to a limited degree and in a limited radius around himself. "It's a shame," Xander Rain called down in the tone of one mimicking one much older. "The Ingansi are strong warriors, and yet you submit yourselves to the degeneracy of the UAP. It's unsightly." Our bleeds are for the protection of the people," Jamilu replied, adjusting his grip on his spear. "Those like you, who fight only for self-advancement, could never understand that." Xander narrowed his eyes. "There is victory," he said, voice low, "and nothing else." "Indeed," Jamilu said, and he focused his pink aether into the tip of his spear. "Come here, then. Come meet victory for yourself." There was a sound like a gunshot as he launched himself off the ground, and a sound like artillery as 2 blades met. Many years ago, the Watcher Bells, right at the top of Ingansi's Grand Palace, were not open to the common man. 5 huge aether armaments of shining silver, they hung in a row before the gathered warriors, silent and still. If the world was kind, they would remain silent and still forever. Alas, each of the 5 Watcher Bells was linked to one of the old demons of the dawn: wisdom, resolve, daring, mercy, victory. If one of those dread weapons was to slip out of their chains and threaten the world once more, their bell would ring, sending a signal through the Principality network and mobilizing those who could subdue it once more. Today, though, silent and still. For this most solemn of ceremonies, the Spear Victory had been brought here, ready to receive a new wielder. The threat the old demons posed was severe, but their utility was undeniable. The aether armaments their consciousnesses had been recorded onto were of the highest grade, each one a central pillar of Ingansi's military might. The Spear Victory was no exception. 16 chosen warriors awaited judgment today, 16 who had honed their minds and bodies to control the power of an old demon of the dawn. 3 of the chosen had already tried to become Victory's wielder, and 3 had already failed. Their resolve had been lacking. 2 had suffered personality contamination and would require treatment for what could be years, while the 3rd had been struck down before Victory could wield him. Yes, not all warriors were here today to try their hand at mastery of the demonic. Some were here to watch, and, should it become necessary, act. One blade wept blood already. "Jamilu Aguta," said the Oba, standing before the pedestal upon which Victory rested. "Are you prepared?" He was resplendent in his golden armor, distinguished with his seasoned gaze. A throne rested right at the back of this massive chamber beneath the bells, but there was no need for the Oba to sit upon it. He was a man who stood with his people. Wherever he happened to walk was his throne. Jamilu stood, 16 years old, with many accolades and triumphs under his belt and not a sliver of doubt in his mind. He nodded. "I am, my Oba." Jamilu strode forward, but just as he passed the Oba on his way to the pedestal, he felt a heavy hand fall on his shoulder. The Oba's next words were for him alone. "You imagine a debt," the Oba said quietly, "but no such debt exists. Are you sure this is what you want?" Jamilu took a deep breath and looked up at the face of the sovereign. It hadn't changed at all since the day he'd welcomed the orphans into this palace, since the day he'd given Jamilu a place in this world. His heart thumped with confidence. "I owe you too much," Jamilu replied, just as quiet. "It can't go unpaid. I couldn't bear it." Slowly, the Oba closed his eyes and suppressed a sigh. The hand fell from Jamilu's shoulder. When the Oba spoke once more, it was with the king's voice, speaking to a kingdom, not any individual. "Then go," he said, turning back towards the gathered warriors, "and take victory in your hands." Jamilu stepped through the Oba's shadow, the pedestal growing larger in his vision as he approached it. The weapon that rested on it, just by looking he could tell it was a physical object, just a spear infused and altered by ether. But it felt like more. It was as though someone had drawn their fingernail over the world and opened up its skin, a ghastly red wound of a weapon. He reached out, it was warm. He grabbed hold of it, it was hot. He took a deep breath, it was burning. And when the moment of pain cleared, the world had changed. The palace was in ruins around him, the roof broken open, exposing a burnt red sky. The 5 Watcher bells lay demolished on the floor, crushed and warped beyond recognition, and all the stone they rested on was charred a deep and scratchy black. Jamilu took a breath. It tasted like smoke. Everything was like smoke here. I forgot what his voice was.
Well, you sort of gave him, like, I think one that was a bit like this, I think, but in this scenario, maybe it should be a little bit more, like, less human, more like...
Monstrous?
More like distinguished, it just sound here, maybe.
"Oh, another one?" He steeled himself as he looked up, past the ruined building, past the mangled bells, and saw that the throne at the end of the chamber was no longer empty. A shadow sat in it, an indistinct silhouette, vaguely humanoid, sprawled on the throne in a gnarled pile of limbs. It stared at Jamilu with 2 tiny pink pinpricks of eyes. Jamilu dropped to the ground, planting his fists against the floor and bowing his head low. "Honored ancestor," he said respectfully, closing his eyes, "I bid you greetings." "Comedian," the spirit purred. "Oh, we have a funny guy here." Victory's voice did not echo through this place as it should have. Instead, the sound seemed to crawl across the floor, squirming up into Jamilu's ears like some unwelcome instincts. He suppressed a shudder. "Not at all," he said, keeping his voice steady as he opened his eyes and looked back up a tad. "No matter what you have become now, you and your kin were once heroes of Ingansi. I would be remiss to ignore that." The pink eyes narrowed. Sweet-talking me, huh? The demon sneered. That sort of shit might work on Daring, but not me, brat. You just want my power, right? I don't blame you. It's really something. Jamilu took a deep breath. The duty of an Ngansi warrior is to protect the Ngansi people. Victory scoffed. Warriors? People? Nah. There's no such thing as warriors or people. Just animals eating each other all the way down. You shouldn't stress yourself out worrying about duties or ideals or whatever the fuck. Just enjoy the feeling of meat between your teeth, hot blood on your tongue. That's all there is, in the end. Jamilu said nothing. You don't agree, brat? A human who declares themselves an animal, Jamilu said. Sounds like a human who's given up, if you ask me. Here we go, Victory chuckled humorlessly. All that so-called respect goes away pretty quick, huh? Go ahead. Tell me how you really feel. What do you need my power for, boy? Jamilu gritted his teeth. He hadn't come here with deceit in his heart. When he'd offered the ancestor his respect, he'd meant it. But, just as truly, the things it was saying now boiled his blood. I have a debt I must repay, he said, voice low. I'll repay it through service. Your power will aid me in this service. Duties and debts and service, Victory sighed. You're boring, man. Is it really such a terrible thing to just live for yourself?
Say that again?
Wait, that's boring, man? Oh my god, it was Jamilu. Write this down in the wiki. Jamilu said nothing to that.
Victory knows.
Fine, then. You can talk a big game. Victory crawled out of his throne, pink eyes drawing closer. But let's see if you can live up to it. It was the work of an instant. Victory was upon Jamilu before he could breathe, the shadow lunging forth with a clawed hand, a hand that tore right through Jamilu's chest. Dodging wasn't even a possibility. Jamilu opened his mouth and blood sprayed from deep within his throat. Ah! He choked. You! Weak! Victory chuckled. Very weak. The last guy challenged me to a contest of arms, you know? That was a mistake. It would have been even worse for you. Still, the result is the same either way. Those pink eyes blazed into contemptuous life inches from Jamilu's face, staring as he succumbed to his injury. If you survive on the way out, Victory mocked, you tell the Oba to send someone a little more impressive next... The demon looked down at its fist, still running Jamilu through. It had just tried to pull it free, but failed. It tried it again, and failed again. What are you doing? It snarled. Get off! Jamilu grinned with bloody teeth. If you want to tell the Oba something, he wheezed, you can tell him yourself. You're leaving this place with me. He seized hold of Victory's arm, gripping it with all his strength and will, ignoring the agony from his wound as he slowly dragged the demon backwards, towards the end of this illusory realm. Fuck off! Victory barked. If it's as you say, Jamilu gasped, and you are nothing but a beast. He looked into those blazing pink eyes with a blazing resolve of his own. Then I'll be the one to bring you to heel. You little shit! Jamilu pulled one last time, and as he saw the world return to life, he felt the weight of victory in his hands. Present day. A bead of sweat trickled down Xander's forehead. Xander's father had had a saying. Actually, he'd had so many sayings. For Xander, the world had been made of the things his father had muttered to himself over and over again. They formed the spine of his life. Win and you are a winner for a short while. Lose and you're a loser forever. He had lost as a supreme, that was true. But that was within the realm of the supremacy. That was the establishment of subordinate and superior. It was poison that Xander could swallow. Losing here, though? Losing to an enemy of the supremacy? And failing his mandate? Unacceptable. Xander spun his halberd, whipping the air into a frenzy, and then adjusting its flow, creating a barrage of wind bullets that smashed into the ground far below, shattering the floor and sending clouds of dust flying in every direction. His eyes flicked around as he floated high above, watching for signs of his enemy's approach. Every now and then he'd see it, a shadow darting through the smog, disappearing by the time he fully looked at it. Nebula, too, was waiting for his chance. No, he'd found his chance. Xander whirled around, raising his halberd and blocking the spear thrust that would have pierced his heart. Nebula, too, had used that spear of his to float up behind him and execute a sneaky attack. And now, even as Xander blocked, Aguda was pushing in further, seeking to pierce his defenses. As if... There was a flow to all things, and the force of this attack was no exception. Xander took the flow of kinetic energy within his weapon, the flow of vibrations from the block, and redirected them. Out of the blade, down the handle, into the palm of Xander's right hand. He could feel the pressure in his skin there, ready to explode. He would not deny it. With a cry of exertion, he thrust his hand forward, planting it against Aguta's stomach and releasing the blast of force. Pressure exploded out of Xander's palm, striking Aguta deep and sending him flying, his back thumping against the concrete wall. Xander did not relent. Manipulating the flow of air around himself to stay aloft, he rushed forward, swinging the blade of his halberd towards Aguta's neck. Today he would bring home the head of a nebula. Only calamity! Xander gasped in pain as the beads of Aguta's sweat left on his hand burst into a shower of pink sparks, a wave of heat clutching his fingers in an instant. Jamilu Aguta didn't miss the chance. Taking advantage of the opening, he darted right back in, seizing Xander by the collar and hurling him down towards the floor. Xander gasped as he struck the ground, a wave of brown aether exploding out from the point of impact. An eager spear's blade pointed down towards his prone figure. The kill was prepared for. As Jamilu lunged down, Xander raised both his hands, ready to unleash another barrage of air shots, but Nebula too was ready for this as well. Victory danced. As Jamilu plummeted, he spun his spear in a complex and chaotic dance. The sheer air pressure produced by the movements disrupting the flow of the air even as Xander tried to control it. Under these conditions, he couldn't even take the flight again to escape. Once, twice, thrice, he thumped his fists against the ground to produce geysers of kinetic energy, but Aguta just darted out of the way each time. As the distance became nothing, Aguta raised his spear above his head, the blade pointing right towards Xander's heart. The boy watched, transfixed as the end came for him. "I'm gonna die! I'm going to lose!" "No!" Xander's hands twitched. He had been told not to do this. His teacher had told him not to do this. His father had told him not to do this. His Supreme had told him not to do this. The sheer potential of his subconscious ability made this unstable. Such strength without the proper will was nothing but a disaster. Xander's eyes watered, and yet, win and you are a winner for a short while. Lose and you are a loser forever. Xander's mouth opened. "Absolution!" he screamed. "Absolution, lend me some strength. This is base Jamilu we're dealing with." Jamilu Aguta blinked, and in doing so, he missed the end of the battle. 1 second, his blade was inches from Xander Rain's chest, ready to pierce his heart and end his life. The next, Jamilu was crumpled against a wall, nearly dented to destruction, his body full of pain and tremors. What had happened? Had he lost consciousness? He looked down and saw where his pain was coming from. He had lost his right arm. Blood poured copiously from the stump of his shoulder, adding to the growing puddle beneath him. Slowly he blinked. What was the voice again?
Well, maybe it's more like this when he's in the weapon.
"Well," Victory giggled, "looks like you're fucked, brat!" Jamilu looked up and saw that the demon perhaps wasn't wrong. Xander Rain had changed. It was still the boy before him, Jamilu could see, but he was no longer himself. An armor of wood had erupted from within his body, forming a humanoid cage, encasing him between bar-like branches. Rain's body dangled, legs in the air, within the arboreal beast. The boy's head was encased in a wooden helmet, exposing only his teeth, bared like some animal, thin wooden tendrils trickling out from within his jaws. Saliva dripped from his mouth, pooling on the ground far below him. Blinded by his own absolution, he loomed in the middle of the wrecked room, great bolts of brown aether lashing from his form and crashing against the floor. Jamilu took a deep breath, wincing as he tried to pull himself up, blood still gushing. The bulk of the pain hadn't reached him yet. This fight was not yet over. He grabbed hold of Victory. Wait, who did? Jamilu?
Yeah.
And Xander Rain opened his mouth. "Ah!" The roar shook the air itself, so loud that it became silence, gusts of pressure blasting out and nearly sending Jamilu flying by themselves. The walls cracked, the roof fell in. Jamilu heard the sound of shattering glass and knew that it was coming from every window for miles around. This wasn't just a monster before him, this was a disaster. And then came the charge. Damn. That's crazy.
He got the life bar to zero. It was like, time to drink the rest of my esters. You were by my side all along. Parental trauma. My mentor.
I can't believe it. I need Jamilu to win so bad. He can't get done in by fucking Xander Rain. Please, Jamilu. We have some questions, though. Some Aetheral questions that I should be reading instead of whining. Weiser asks, are Aether ticks something Edgar intended to happen?
No.
Rurum asks, has the prince ever been host to someone with principality? If so, based on how it works, could it instruct the host to recreate the technique and get an update of information?
Potentially it could. I would say it has had principality in the past. It would have, yes. So if it wanted to, or if it would be... I shouldn't say if it wanted to, because it doesn't want stuff. If it would be advantageous, it could direct someone to recreate the ability, or basically hack into the network to get some more information.
I gotcha. Rurum also asks, what is the demonym for people of Rakebone? If you don't know, demonym is like how you'd call a British person British, or an American an American.
It would be.
Rakebone-ish. Rurum asks, as seen from Terminal Verdict, what makes something a forbidden killing art?
It's one that damages your body in the act of doing it.
Oh. Rurum asks, roughly how long ago did the colorless light strike Monadere?
It would have been around, say, 50 years ago.
Lan asks, how hard...
Probably closer to 40, actually.
Okay, 40 years ago. Lan asks, how hard would it be to make an ability that allows you to seance with dead Aether users?
Ask Anatris.
Softy asks... oh, no, they're not asking. Okay. Weiser asks, which Arcana automatic did Cadman fight back in 9.7? If it wasn't an Arcana automatic, what was it?
Let's say that was the Emperor.
Okay. Lan asks,
or let's say, actually, more interesting, it was, let's say, it's... Just because this will let me do fun stuff later on, maybe. It was Emperor Larva, let's say. Like, Larva. Emperor Larva. That could be interesting.
Larva?
Yeah. Emperor Larva.
Interesting. Lan asks, did Gale become Supreme by Dawn Contest?
No, he defeated the previous Supreme.
And that is all our questions. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.